Nigeria's debt-to-GDP ratio has dropped to 39.4% in Q1 2025, down from 41.5% in the previous quarter, thanks to a rebasing of the gross domestic product to 379 trillion naira. But here's the catch. The country's total public debt actually grew year on year to 121.67 trillion naira. That's a 22.8% increase. So while the headline figure looks promising, it raises more nuanced questions about what's really changed and what does this mean for the economy going forward. We have joining us Faiz Muhammad. He's an Economic and Public Affairs Analyst. It's a pleasure to have you in, Faiz.
Good morning, Joanna. Thank you for having me.
All right, a pleasure. So let's begin with this rebasing, and it's been an ongoing conversation all week since it happened. What are the effects on the economy, and what's our economy suddenly worth?
Well, the GDP rebasing reflects an update of the base year and an inclusion of previously underrepresented sectors like fintech, e-commerce, or creative industries. These sectors have grown significantly over the past decade, but weren't fully captured under the old 2010 methodology. By realigning with 2019, as the base year, Nigeria now accounts for structural changes in consumption, technology, and added services. Essentially, the economy didn't suddenly become richer, its measurement improved. So painting a more realistic picture of what the current economic activity is, rather than ignoring fast-growing industries during modern economic growth.
Yeah, I mean, and I remember when the results came out, it was quite underwhelming. But then we began to examine what this meant for the larger economy. And one of those areas that we've been looking at is debt, right? Our total debt still rose by 22 trillion in 1 year. Should we really be celebrating a lower ratio at this point?
Well, no, not exactly. The ratio looks better because of a larger GDP denominator, not because the debt burden has eased in any serious fashion. Our actual debt rose from 121 trillion, I believe, to 149 trillion, which is a huge jump in nominal terms. Servicing costs consume over 80% of federal revenue. So while the optics suggest fiscal health, the fundamentals haven't really improved. Rebasing doesn't make repayments easier or revenue stronger. It really only alters perception. The hope is that it alters the perception of our potential investors. But if revenues remain weak and borrowing persists, the sustainability challenge continues. So I don't think there's very much to celebrate with regard to our future debt distress.
But we know that the current ratio, the 39.4%, is now under the government's 40% threshold. As you have said, we just look good on paper. But we know that this debt to GDP ratio is a key metric for borrowing. So do you see, I mean, does this new ratio give Nigeria, some sort of room or license to even borrow more?
Well, debt sustainability isn't just about ratios. It's about the ability to service that debt. If your debt servicing gulps most of the revenue, then borrowing without stronger revenue mobilization becomes risky. The space, quote unquote, to borrow doesn't equal fiscal health. It's like increasing your credit limit while your income remains stagnant. So Nigeria should prioritize boosting its non-oil revenue and blocking whatever leakages exist. And of course, improving tax compliance before taking on any new loans. Borrowing for productive infrastructure could help, but more debt for recurrent spending would simply worsen our already fragile fiscal reality.
Finally, because we are quite pressed for time, what does this mean for the average Nigerian? Does a lower debt ratio perhaps translate to lower interest rates or more jobs? Are there tangible benefits to this recalibration, or is it just mostly useful to international optics and creditworthiness? And I'm trying to squeeze in as many questions as possible. But from the lender side of things as well, like the IMF, World Bank, how are they reacting to this new ratio?
Well, look, a lower debt to GDP ratio isn't a statistical change. It's just a statistical change. It's not a real economic improvement. It won't reduce inflation. It won't lower lending rates. It's not going to create jobs overnight. Ordinary Nigerians will still face high prices, and unemployment hasn't improved in any measurable fashion. The real benefit is likely indirect. Improved investor confidence might stabilize markets and attract more capital, but that depends on the extent of our financial reforms. So until Nigeria fixes revenue generation and tackles corruption, the average Nigerian will still see little relief from a ratio drop. It's really an optics win and not a real win. As far as the IMF and World Bank goes, so far officials have remained cautious. Historically, these institutions acknowledge rebasing as an accounting improvement, and the IMF typically warns countries not to take rebasing as an excuse for excessive borrowing. So I think it's likely to maintain its call for reforms, widening the tax net, reducing subsidies, prioritizing capital. In totality, lenders may note the optics positively, but will continue to stress structural fixes over any statistical gains.
So the optics do count. However, further magnifying the issues and the disconnect between the numbers and the reality lived by Nigerians. Thank you so much for your time, Faiz Muhammad, Economic and Public Affairs Analyst.
Thank you for having me.